Okay, so we're sitting here with Joe Landry from Lewiston, Maine, who's been modeling for over 70 years, and he's a member of the Maine Three Wheelers. And he's agreed, as one of the founding members, to spend a few moments with us today talking about some recent changes to his layout. So my first question for Joe is this. You have one of the most enviable layouts of all the Maine Three Railers. What inspired you to want to change something that was already so wonderful?
Well, keep up with the times, because I started this first layout in 1972, built the framework like you would a house, because my father was a contractor, so learned a lot of techniques. And then we didn't have any computers or anything, it was all transformers. So I had 5 big 400-watt transformers, but it was kind of boring because you couldn't even walk around your layout to see the train when it disappeared behind a mountain. But that was kind of the beginning. But my real first beginning was from Santa Claus, and that's in a video because I was 7 years old, and there was a little downtown in Lewiston. There was a little store next door that at Christmas sold Lionel trains. And they had one running in the window, a little table, and you would put your hand on the window and it was wired so the heat from your hand would get the train going. And it was on a timer, it would only work for so many minutes, no matter if you left your hand there forever. So somebody else would have to come up and started, and I wanted that train so bad, and all the neighborhood kids would go around. It was Provo and Vincent French was a store that sold it, and 2 weeks before Christmas it disappeared. And somehow, I don't know how, but I wrote a letter to Santa Claus, and believe it or not, he answers them, because Christmas morning I woke up, went early, and the train was all set up around the Christmas tree. There was a 470 train that's in the cabinet out there. So Santa Claus got my letter, and he took care of it, and then the kids from the neighborhood came up to the apartment building. My father owned 2 big apartment buildings there, and we played with it. So that was kind of the real beginning until I moved here where I have my own house. I had built, my father had an apartment building, so I had built different layouts down there. But they were all, you know, the old-fashioned type. So we bought our new house here in 1950, and in 52 I built this layout, started in. Now this was really almost, it's a 120 years old house, so it was like 60 years old and had been moved and abandoned, but made a new concrete foundation, put in big steel beams, and I bought this house for the basement because the upstairs was all gone, broken windows, everything. But the house had been abandoned for 10 years, but this basement is what I wanted, because this train layout is 28 by 16, so with an 8 by 8 addition.
So we went from Santa Claus.
So we started, years, Santa Claus started all everything.
Layouts, and we got to this house today.
Yes.
And you had a beautiful layout in this house, but because of the technology,
things changed.
You wanted to bring it up to date.
Yes, and it was all Plasticville, and it was nice, and I loved it. But every train meet I go to, that's what maybe my fault was. Because every year, TCA since 77, and all the other clubs, and I go and I see this new car, this new heading, this new engine, but it was all still by hand. Then they started coming out with buildings without lights. Like those buildings up there, MTH, no lights in them. I put those in this year. But they were beautiful. Lionel started coming out with buildings. So then I wanted coming out with switches. So I says, well, we got to keep up with the times. And Charlie Rowe started with his business. And I used to go to Charlie Rowe when he still had a beauty parlor. And he started with a little closet like this. And that's where he sold his trains. And he kept growing and growing. Now, of all his thousands of customers, I was probably his 5th customer with Bob Hood. And he always remembered when he'd see me at the train meet, it's Landry from Lewiston. I says, you got it right. And I send him pictures of the layout. So that's how it started.
How many months ago did you start this current renovation?
So I did complete tear off of the layout every 10 years. Remove everything. Then they come out with bigger engines. You need bigger loops. You need bigger curves. You need 90s. You need special switches. So on and so forth. So you rip it out again. So every 5, 6, 7 years, depending on what was coming out. So this one's been ripped out about 4 times. Everything to the bare wood. But they keep coming out with new technology. Finally, I had a cellar full of trains here, but they were from my father. My father liked trains. And in 1948, when Lionel came out with smoke and sound on their F3 diesel, my father would go around to Portland and all the train stores, and I wanted that, but it was like $75 for a set, no way. But my father would ask, well, I can't afford that, but you have anything, any trade-ins? And I would get big boxes. My father would buy me big boxes of pre-war and some post-war, but mostly pre-war, American Flyer, Marx, Lionel, pre-war. He'd have a big box like this. Give me $5. That's where I built up a whole empire here that I sold when MTH and Lionel came out with the Command. That was the beginning of the big bucks. But that's kind of my beginning. I won't go any further, except now it's all new stuff.
So just a few months ago, you started this latest renovation though, right?
The latest renovation. I bought 3 years ago, I discovered Menards buildings. And I said, wow. So I showed it to my wife, and it was like $80. I forget which one. But it was a power plant. So Christmas time, I still don't want any clothes, nothing else, just Christmas, just toys, period. And I got a big box, and there was that first building right there, the power plant. So that started it.
So then you had to wire all those new buildings and lights, huh?
It took a lot of wiring. To the present day, to this layout, I have 28 different Menards items, buildings, billboards on the layout. So once you see something that you like prime rib, I still buy it, still like it, prime rib. So this was my prime rib of this layout. But gradually, I kept this winter, I said, this is it, I'm making the decision. First thing I did, I took all those old MTH buildings up there that were all dark with no lights. I says, that's no good. So I took them out. I was going to start selling them. Then I said, now wait a minute. Those are nice buildings. They're just dead. So I took all the 15 buildings up there, MTH. You see the big ones all lit up. Amazon. I went looking around. Forget it. Amazon. I put lights in all those buildings. It took 100 feet of, I'll show them to you, little rolls and it comes with the lights already attached to them. So lighting that whole section, every building cost only $36. But
He
a
strips
lot
the
of
light.
time was spent. I'll discuss later how to do those buildings. And it took me like 3-4 days of sleepless nights to figure out what we're gonna do.
But tell us, how many days and months and hours have you spent on
Now,
this
I
latest
started right after Christmas. I got another building for my kids, 2 more buildings. They know what to buy me. So I says, okay, that's it. So I ended up buying the rest of the buildings, which is about $2,000, believe it or not.
Yep.
But anyways, then I started putting it together and wiring. To the present day, there's 5,000 feet of wiring underneath this layout because I have 10 rolls, empty rolls, and they're 500 feet apiece.
5,000
So
feet?
I have 5,000 feet of wiring. Now, how do you keep track of all of that? Maybe we can talk about the wiring later.
Yep.
That's a whole new episode.
We want to have another installation here. We're going to go under the table.
Yes.
And we're going to see what Joe did these last few months, how he got all those Menards buildings wired up and operational. In
And I work 6 hours a day from after Christmas, and I'm still not done. I got 3 more posts to put up. They're in there. And I worked on it yesterday all day, and I finally got the last thing running. So there's a lot of action on it.
Okay, Joe, so if any other modelers were thinking about tearing their layout apart and redoing it, have you got any words of wisdom that you would advise them before they take the sledgehammer to their current layout?
The only thing I can say is that you need, if your layout is built like mine is, like a house on the bottom, which is 52 years old now, I can walk, I do walk on that layout, build it like a house with very few posts underneath. This whole layout only has 6 posts to hold the whole thing up because it's built like this house is 38 feet, 1 post. So build it like you would build a house. Then I've got some other things that I wrote before for your wiring, which for me was a mistake, but I'll show you underneath the layout what mistakes I did building the layout, and we can go from there.
Okay.
But if I had to do it all over again, if I was 30 years old, this whole layout would be stripped. And there's only one big item missing on this whole layout.
And what's that?
It's a flat layout. There's hills, there's mountains, there's trains go up and down. But today I would put 2 sheets of 2-inch styrofoam glued together. And the tracks would not be from Arizona to Maine flat.
Okay.
And it would be, the tracks would be up. When you run the trains here, they're noisy. Now, styrofoam would be all glued. I would put the tracks, and I would take a heat iron and electric with a wire and build culverts between the tracks so the water can drain, and you'd have the tracks up and down,
Contoured, okay.
contoured, and right now I did it with going up with hills, but this flat track, if it rains, it's gonna flood, and that's not what you want. So I would have, and then I would have culverts, and every now and then I would drill a little hole where the culverts are going down through the table, and I would put a little gray pipe underneath as the big culvert and the,
Catch basin.
where it goes down the catch basin.
So make the foundation plenty rugged, spaced out the posts so you can work around underneath it.
And don't store anything underneath it. You'll
Keep
be
it
sorry.
Wide, keep it wide open under there, and
Wide open.
some texture on the top of the layout so that
Yes.
the scenery goes up and down, and
Yes, but
foam
there's
is a good way to do that.
another thing that people don't realize we're all different heights. I'm 6 feet. So my wife says, what do you want? I says, I want you to take this tape measure. I sat on the floor, leaned against the wall. I said, how tall am I? She says, 43 inches, whatever it was. I said, so there's the layout. The bottom of the 2x6s have to be a little bit higher than my head.
So you can work under there
But-
without scooching.
Right, so make it for yourself,
Okay.
not for somebody else. But that's number one. You gotta sit on the floor, have somebody measure you, add 2 inches more. Now I should have added 4 inches. Another mistake, because now I have to crawl on the floor, then sit, and I should have a little mechanics, so this layout should be 4 inches taller. But you live and learn. That's why at 83, I want to share my mistakes.
Okay, Joe, so we were talking about some ideas in the last segment, and I was going to ask you, what things would you do the next time if there's another renovation to this? And I know you were talking about shaping the landscaping using styrofoam, so tell us what you would do if there's ever going to be another revision here.
There's continuous renovations every winter because my wife been married for 60 years and she kind of likes to be with me maybe a couple hours a day. That's enough. So I spend my winters down here. And one thing I looked it over, styrofoam, it's too late. However, as we look in there, you'll see that I built streets, passing yellow lines, white lines, everything. That's all my own invention. I bought a roll of streets and I figured out real quick that's junk. But I have not done that end of the layout or the other end of the layout. They're still kind of just black. But you're going to see the middle, so that's going to be part of the issue. Plus, if there's some new accessory that comes out from from Menards that I like better, which I can't imagine, but they did come out with one just a little while ago, and it's the Menards store. So I had to start again rethinking. I found room for it, but that's always with my wife's help, because I tell her I'm stuck on this. So she comes down, I disagree with her, but eventually she's right on everything. The only thing she ever made a mistake on was probably I do, but that's too late, 60 years later.
All right. So we're again visiting with Joe Landry of Lewiston, who was a Maine three-railer of many years back when we started the club. And once upon a time, Joe submitted a photograph to the Lionel Railroad Club magazine. And for that, he was selected and then awarded a prize, which he's going to hold up and show you right now.
Yeah. One and only.
For his photograph that he submitted in
Why
1980.
now?